Hello. So, this is kind of a video I wanted to make before Deltarune Chapter 3 and 4 came out. But I didn't have time to do it. And I'm kind of glad I didn't because Deltarune Chapter 4 is kind of the chapter that puts a lot of the uh, imagery that they borrowed from like religion. This is the chapter where they put a lot of that in context. And in chapters 1 and 2, we didn't have a lot of context for it, which, made it kind of weird, made it kind of sound weird in some places. But chapter 4 is kind of what puts it in context. And it's kind of what makes me realize what Toby Fox is trying to do, essentially. Um, I wanted to make this video because I myself am a Christian Undertale fan. I don't want to be preachy with this, but it's just some themes I've noticed and some stuff that might help us understand the lore as well. So I'll just talk about it. Um, so Undertale had the mercy and genocide route. I think what's going on with Deltarune is that Deltarune is going to have an angel and a devil route. So if you don't know, I'm pretty firmly in the angel is the player theory. The angel mentioned in the prophecy is the player theory, because that's what it was in Undertale, and in Undertale it kind of made that very obvious, right? Uh, because it was like an allusion to the two different routes you could make. Deltarune seems to be doing the same thing, just on a bit of a bigger scale. Um, and so let's talk about it. First, I want to compare the idea of the pacifist and genocide route in Undertale to the idea of an angel and devil route. Undertale has the pacifist route, which could be seen as the angel route, in which unconditional mercy leads to the salvation of the entire underground. Something like that seems to parallel the Christian method of salvation, where it's not by an enemy going through some sort of redemption arc, it's just by them accepting the offer of mercy. In Undertale, you basically just have to get the enemy to a point where like they'll accept your offer of mercy, um, and that's how you get the good ending. Uh, Now the genocide route in Undertale is interesting because the game keeps calling you not a human and not a monster, implying you are something else. You stand in the judgment hall, which is designed to look like a church, and you are deemed unworthy to reach the surface. And then Sans judges you for your Sans. Um, Chara shows itself and says, I am the demon that comes when you call its name, in which Chara seems to be the representation of the player's innate desire to do the evil route. In that sense, it's the devil route. You're not a human, you're not a monster, you're a demon, is essentially what the game is trying to say. I used to think a lot of that was just coincidence and kind of made me happy as a religious Undertale fan. But it feels like Deltarune proves that that was the intent the whole time. Mercy route is angel route, and genocide route is devil route. So I think Deltarune is essentially just that, but on a larger scale. The angel route, where you play as the light inside your soul mentioned in the song, the one that guards the Delta warriors through the darkness and keeps them safe through the night's trials and tribulations. The angel route is the route where you save the world from the roaring, possibly through a great and willing sacrifice towards the end of the game. I wouldn't know what happens at the end of the game, but I mean, I'd be open to that being the way we save the world. This has been the normal path from chapters 1 to 4. Even with the controlling Chris stuff, which seems iffy, it's heavily implied Chris is the one forcing us to be caged within them. Now, in my earlier videos, I kept making jokes about Chris being evil, and that's why Chris is doing this. But it's more likely that Chris is being coerced into keeping us captive by the person on the phone, and that this is another place where Chris is just frustrated with the complete and utter lack of control in their lives. Um, Probably being coerced into doing this by the person on the phone, which upon second inspection, I do think is Carol Holiday. Um, like Chris was on the phone, and then the person on the phone said, "I'd be right there," and then the next scene is Carol showing up at the mansion and like splitting up Noelle and Susie, basically. So I do think the person on the phone is Carol. That's a bit of a tangent. Uh, Deltarune, the game, is telling us our choices don't matter, and these do not feel directed at Chris. They feel directed at the player. Because little to nothing the player does in like sort of like the dialogue choices has any effect on the story. Um, if Chris discarded our intended vessel, this entire situation is ideal neither for Chris nor the player. Uh, but it is technically Chris's fault. Maybe it's more so Carol's fault. Um, because of our discarded vessel, Chris is basically our only way to interact with the world. Um, so this is just kind of a situation that we're forced into at the start of the game. Uh, the Snowgrave route is undoubtedly the devil route. Um, I did an earlier video how I believe this story is based on the story of Jesus in the wilderness before his ministry, where he was out in the wilderness and the only person he had to talk to was the devil, and the devil tried to get him to do a whole bunch of bad things. Of course, Jesus resisted, but Noelle is a flawed character, so Noelle would be able to fall for some of these temptations. Um, in this route, you do not play as the light. You play as the demon that disguises itself as an angel of light. You tempt Noelle into freezing darkness to death, force her to wear a painful thorn ring, and basically commit demonic possession in a very uncomfortable cutscene in Chapter 4. Um, so I guess that's Deltarune. But it should be noted that you do not play as a god in this story. You play as an angel, which can either act like God would or act like the devil would. Because angels are sort of, usually when you hear angel, you think good, but the demons were of the same nature of the angels. They're just fallen angels. They're just evil angels, basically. Um, and so basically, you just get to choose which type of angel you are as you play this game. I can understand that might make some players uncomfortable because it takes a few chapters to piece that together, and it's a little more fluid with when you get to make these angel-like and devil-like choices than Undertale was. Um, I think that's the best way to piece together the religious symbolism, though. I can be your angel or your devil. um, but one thing I should mention is that, in regards to this theory as well, is in the original Undertale, uh, Mettaton was also a disembodied soul. The character of Mettaton in the original Undertale, he was like a disembodied soul, but then Alphys found him, and then Alphys built like a robot body for him, which is, kind of interesting. It's like, it's sort of the idea that nothing in this world should exist without a soul or a body. Those two things are both um, sort of required for um, basic standards in Undertale. It's like, so if it was right for Mettaton to be given a body when he asked for one, isn't it right for us, the player, to eventually have our own body and not just be forced to be in Chris's chest the whole time? I think that's I think that's you know, I think that's fair. I do think that's fair. Interestingly enough, in chapter 2, we sort of directly control the thrash machine. The thrash machine is this thing that, as far as I'm aware, doesn't have its own sense of consciousness. Um, it really feels like we, the soul, are just taking control of the thrash machine, um, and using it to fight the queen. So I'm wondering if we will get a body of some kind by the end of the game, whether or not it's our discarded vessel returns, um, whether or not it's something like Noelle willingly letting us control them in sort of like a more "I trust you" scene in the normal route, rather than the it being forced in the evil route. Um, there would be something like that. Um, I'm still open to the idea of a route based on going off the beaten path in a cryptic method. I'm still open to something like that being a part of a good route, because it does feel like we are supposed to take control somehow by the end of the game. Not control of the other characters, um, but probably like uh, find our own good way of taking control by the end of the story. Taking control of our role in the story. Um, if that makes any sense. Uh, so yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell where the story is going to go at this point in the story. But I did feel like I wanted to do a video on how it's basically just letting you be whatever type of angel you want, and how we probably are going to have our own vessel by the end of the game. Whether that be stealing Noelle, or whether or not that be us finding a willing vessel, or like someone else building a vessel for us, like with Metaton. Um, I don't know. We'll see. Bye, everyone.